By contrast to the polarization in Washington, the report before you involves 12 issue groups coming together on key issues facing the nation. These groups rise above the devastating compartmentalization of the executive and legislative branches.
This effort was based in large part on Dave Abshire's recommendation in his book, A Call to Greatness, which was issued in January of 2008. It's important that you understand that this is a nonpartisan effort. Our future is at risk. America is at a critical crossroads. In my view, the decisions that are made or that fail to be made within the next 5 years will largely determine whether our collective future is better than our past.
Was it candidly the institutions of government as they exist today, and if you think about it, are not really designed or focused on that which may occur 5 or 10 years down the road. But call me the next time a member of the House or Senate or a bipartisan group within the political arena says, we anticipate these problems a decade from now, and we're going to act today. Now, we can look long-term, but as David and his group have said, you may need to have the strategy long-term, but we've got to start thinking in terms of budgeting long-term as well.
And for our present purposes, let me define competitiveness with a 4-letter word, J-O-B-S, jobs. In this marketplace, Americans are going to have to be able to compete for jobs, not just with their neighbors across town, but with their neighbors across the globe. And that's going to be a huge challenge for us.
That's going to drive the politics of the American family to say, you mean you're raising my kid and he's not going to be able to compete for that job Shell's going to have because the Belgians are going to be better prepared? That's the most explosive political issue out there in the country. And it's going to hit the fan in the next 10 years, I believe.
No country in the history of the world has ever prospered by sealing itself off from the world. And today that's more important than ever before because of globalization. In Colombia and Panama, the goods from those two countries come into our market duty-free. And we pay as much as 35% duty. That's a tax on our entrepreneurs that sell into that market. The majority of entrepreneurs, American entrepreneurs that sell into Latin American markets, are small and medium-sized businesses. They are the backbone of our job creation. So we talk about jobs, jobs, jobs. We ought to move on those.
Between standards and tests, we need to have a very much more aligned curriculum and, the most important of all, a better teaching force. You can have a question about the Korean War, and the question would be, quote, who was president of the United States during the Korean War? You teach to that, all you do is give a kid a set of facts. But you ask the question, why were we as a country engaged in this war? What was the policy objective? And then give them 5 alternate answers. Wow. Then the teacher has got to teach to a different conclusion. The quality of the exams is critical.
So I think one of the premises of the energy part of this is it's not an either-or decision. It's not ecumenical. You've got to be ecumenical about it. You don't choose one side or the other. And we're now reaching the stage, though, a new one where how does these new sources get integrated into our energy system? Because as they get bigger, the question of integration becomes more complex. Investment of infrastructure, being sure that we are investing in the kind of infrastructure we need for this century and even for the next century, innovation and priorities. And I think that gets us in place to live up to the premises that David outlined for us, which is really preparing for the long haul.
Forevermore in the United States, our security and our prosperity will be tied to the security and prosperity of the balance of the world. When you think about it, in the 60s, we have really the only economy, the only military. We've got supremacy just about everywhere. We're the only country that's making widgets, gadgets, and gadgets. But slowly, inexorably, things have changed through the force of globalization. And those in this town who can or desire to be political isolationist or economic isolationist would put, frankly, I think, America on a path to a second-degree military and to a second-degree geopolitical power and to a second-rate economy. I think one of the interesting pieces of this is the Foundation for International Understanding. I think it's a remarkable report suggests when we take a look at global problems, why don't we take a regional approach? Why don't we have the Treasury and State and the Department of Homeland Security and Justice and the military take a look at regions, because they've the global interdependencies. Let's think a little bit differently about how we're trying to affect foreign policy. But if you're talking about future security and future prosperity, you better start thinking about what we're going to do in the world of cyber, the cyber world. Now, everybody talks about cybersecurity. I have yet to have somebody really identify for me what they're talking about, other than the fact that it is the backbone of the world's economy. We are probably the most vulnerable because we're the most dependent, but by and large,
as Secretary Clinton complained recently, the debt and deficit now even become a problem of national security.
Debt has more than doubled in the last 10 years, and it's on track to double again in the next 10 years. Our total liabilities and unfunded promises for Social Security and Medicare have tripled in the last 10 years, now $62.3 trillion, over $200,000 per person. Creating the Fiscal Future Commission, or as President Obama has done, the Fiscal Responsibility and Reform Commission, can be a way to help us avoid passing that tipping point. But that commission must have goals beyond balancing the primary budget at 2015. Frankly, that's not a very tough.
I think this commission may be a last call. Eminent historian Niall Ferguson in Newsweek and in Foreign Affairs talks about states that deficit and debt are the precursor of the decline of great nations.
The foreign financiers upon whom we depend, many of whom do not always wish us well, could simply get tired of financing our deficits at that level. I don't make the analogy with Greece as of today, but in fact, these numbers would be much, much, much worse than Greece of today. And we would have a crisis that made the recent crisis look like child's play by comparison.
Surely we can all agree we need a different tax code than the one today, one favoring savings, investment, innovation, entrepreneurship, and growth. Newly appointed commission member Paul Ryan, in his imaginative A Roundtable for America's Future, uses similar language. Perhaps we can all agree on new ways to increase the revenue stream as well.